Hi there, I'm João Lima, editor of Data Economy, and here with me I've got Liviu Arsene, senior e-threat analyst at Bitdefender. Liviu, thanks a lot for talking to me. What sort of the main threats are there for the data center operators today, and are we on the verge of a massive data center security issue?
Well, some of the biggest threats that we've seen that are targeting data centers, regardless whether they're corporate data centers that reside on the corporate network or whether they're cloud-based services, have to do with APTs, also known as advanced persistent threats. Unlike traditional threats, APTs are designed to be resilient, to be persistent, and also have a long period of staying within the organization. And their main purpose is actually to exfiltrate as much company data as possible before actually being detected.
Okay, but first, when it comes to APTs, it takes about 5 months for an enterprise to find the threat. How can data center security professionals help with that?
Well, there's not always a single security solution that you can deploy within your organization that can find every piece of threat or that is compatible with every operating system or every infrastructure that you have. So the best security advice would be take a more layered security approach. For instance, whether you're using hybrid or virtual infrastructure, it makes the world of difference in terms of what security solution you're using. Also, it's important to figure out what type of virtualization you're using within your environment. For instance, you might have Citrix, you might have Hyper-V, or you might simply use VMware. And there are security solutions actually these days that can offer memory introspection, for instance, from the hypervisor level. So that will give you an unprecedented level of visibility into how APTs actually work, how they affect a victim, and how you can actually protect the victim from being infected or taken over.
For example, when something does go wrong, how do you find who to blame for that?
Well, it's difficult. Somebody will always point the finger at somebody else. It's a matter of policy usually, and you need to have a strict process of controlling who is responsible for who. That not only helps identify as soon as possible when the breach has occurred, but it will also make it a lot easier for the organization to set up new processes in place in order to make that process, in order to make that event not to occur again. So you need to have a process in place. So whenever you identify a threat, you need to have certain steps that you need to take. For instance, you need to isolate it, you need to identify it, you need to remove it. And that takes time. And the more you test and the more you assess your infrastructure, the less time you're able to consume whenever you detect a new threat. And that's a process that keeps going on and on forever. And it also depends on the tools that you're using.
And then from your experience in the industry, do you see data center operators and even cloud operators as well aware of all these new issues around APTs and even cyber terrorism? There's a lot of conversations around cyber terrorism nowadays, especially in the backstage. Do you see a lot of them talking about it? Are they aware of things even?
Yes, they are. I mean, data center operations and organizations are definitely aware of what an APT is. They're aware of the fact that they could become a victim. It's not a matter of when, it's a matter of, what am I going to do after I know that I'm
So all of them should be prepared to be attacked?
Yes, they all are to some extent. The problem is that they don't usually have the necessary visibility to figure out when the attack occurred and how to stop it in time. So that's why sometimes they usually resort to new technologies that they deploy, to more technologies. I mentioned earlier the layered security approach. So they integrate CM systems, they integrate endpoint security solutions, and even security solutions designed for virtual environments, because that's when you cannot simply deploy a traditional endpoint security solution within a virtual environment. You have cost, operations, and a lot of overhead. So you need to be prepared and adapt those security solutions based on what your company requirements are.
And then because no one seems to be immune to this, do you see enough collaboration around the industry to take care of these threats? Are people sharing what happened to them? Are people sharing how they solve the issues to make sure we advance to a safer sort of data storage world?
Well, there is regulation that heads towards that direction. We've seen legislation passed in the US that obliges companies to report a data breach within 72 hours or stuff like that. There's also the GDPR, for instance, that's about to come into effect in May 2018, that again enforces, or at least tries to enforce, some sort of visibility into data breaches, specifically asking companies to report a data breach within 72 hours. I guess the more right now we might not be as willing to collaborate, but as time passes and people start realizing that information, the exchange of information and knowledge between organizations that have suffered a data breach or are expecting to suffer a data breach. This information exchange needs to occur on a scale that's a matter of minutes or hours sometimes.
Okay. And then when it comes to Bitdefender, not in a marketing sort of way, but what sort of things are you doing to help the industry work with these sort of issues, and what can we expect from you in the future?
Well, we've already started working on some, sometimes I would use the term revolutionary, but it's the term groundbreaking that makes more sense. We've identified, for instance, that for hybrid infrastructure or virtual infrastructures, for instance, it makes a lot more sense to use the hypervisor as an extra security layer. This is something that nobody has ever done before and has never even attempted to do. Okay. Practically, from the start, you consider the operating system as faulty, as being manipulated by some sort of APT. And you take security to the hypervisor layer, which allows you to tap into directly the raw memory allocated to each virtual machine. Okay. So that means you're not only able to see clearly exactly what's going on within the memory of each virtual machine, but you're also able to guarantee the integrity of applications running within the VM. That's something that nobody else has been able to achieve, and we can do it. Okay. Imagine being able to detect a zero-day vulnerability without knowing about it. Because all of these attacks, including APT, exactly, including APTs, one of the main features of an APT is that it first needs to exploit memory, a memory vulnerability, a type of attack. And there are only a handful of memory attacks that are associated with APTs. So what if you were able to protect the operating system from outside the operating system? And that's what we've managed to achieve right now.
Okay. But when you look at the whole industry in itself, are you confident that tomorrow will be safer than today?
Well, we're definitely working our way towards that. I mean, just like we've mentioned previously, collaboration between industries and especially collaboration between security vendors is definitely going to help us build a more secure and robust infrastructure. Whether or not the bad guys or the criminals will adapt as well, that remains to be seen. But if there's something we've learned in the past couple of years is that yes, they will adapt, they will learn, they will employ new technologies. But the trick is to always minimize the distance between what you can provide and the time they need to react.
Okay, Liviu, thanks a lot for talking to me.
Absolutely.
Don't forget you can follow Data Economy on Twitter, Facebook and LinkedIn, and also visit the website on www.data-economy.com.